Welcome, friends. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today is the 1st of May, 2026, and believe me, this day has been packed to the limit. Events are coming in from all directions, and many of them will have long-term consequences across several theaters of war simultaneously. The Ukrainian front, West Africa, the Middle East, grand geopolitics. Today we break it all down in order, without filler and without hysteria. But before we get into it, a brief request, one I make regularly and will keep making, because the situation demands it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it right now, and make sure you hit the bell icon and select all notifications. This isn't just a formality. YouTube is actively suppressing the reach of content related to military analysis, armed conflicts, and geopolitics. The algorithm is working against channels like this one, cutting views, pulling us from recommendations, shadow-restricting our audience. Subscribing with the bell enabled is literally the only reliable way to guarantee you receive notifications about new episodes, bypassing the algorithmic filters. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. A separate and sincere thank you goes to our sponsors and to everyone who has used the Super Thanks feature to support the channel financially. Every contribution, no matter the size, is a real investment in development, in equipment, in software, in the ability to work every single day and deliver serious analysis rather than a superficial news recap. You make this channel possible, and I'm genuinely grateful for that. Now let's get to work. Sumy region, Kharkiv, and 14 kilometers to Sumy. We start with Sumy Oblast, and not by accident. That's where the characteristic Ukrainian "it's all over" alarm is coming from today, which, as a rule, means one thing: something genuinely happened, and keeping quiet about it is no longer an option. Here's the fact that Ukrainian media have acknowledged, reluctantly, with caveats, and with every attempt to downplay its significance. The Russian army has taken control of Kharkiv and Mala Kharkiv. I reported on this 2 to 3 days ago, so for regular viewers of this channel, it's no surprise. But now it's been officially confirmed even by the Ukrainian side, which means the conversation becomes substantive. The villages themselves are small, but their significance isn't determined by their size, it's determined by geography. From Kharkiv to the outskirts of Sumy, 14 kilometers. 14 kilometers to a regional capital with a population approaching 250,000. That's point 1. Point 2. Taking these villages gives Russian forces a solid exit onto the road, beyond which begins a forested area stretching practically to the outskirts of Sumy itself. Forest means cover, logistics, and the ability to concentrate forces covertly. For military planners, that matters enormously. This is precisely why Ukrainian generals, media figures, and the so-called experts on marathon television are nervous. Offensive operations by the northern group of forces are being conducted across several bridgeheads simultaneously, with varying degrees of success. But it is here, pushing north to south, where the most pronounced advance is being observed. We'll be watching this closely. The Sumy direction promises to be one of the critical axes in the weeks ahead. Kharkiv direction, Pokaliana, Bilyi Kolodyaz, and the logic of the coming battle. The Russian Ministry of Defense and the northern group of forces today reported advances in the area of the settlement of Pokalian. Based on data from both the MOD and the group itself, mappers are making another correction on this section of the front. Pokalian is yet another settlement on the Ukrainian side of the Vovcha River that has passed under Russian army control, and this brings us closer to the next key objective, Bilyi Kolodyaz. But here, we need to speak honestly, without illusions. A direct push by Russian units from the Vovcha River line straight south toward Bilyi Kolodyaz is unlikely. The distance between the forward positions along the river and the settlement itself is approximately 9 kilometers of open terrain. In the conditions of this conflict, with the mass deployment of FPV drones, that distance is practically insurmountable for infantry and vehicles without catastrophic losses. No competent commander is going to send troops through that kind of kill corridor without extreme necessity. So what does the realistic scenario look like? In all likelihood, the Russian side is currently consolidating its positions along the Vovcha River in the northeastern direction, methodically working through an entire chain of settlements. Kharkiv, Volokhovka, Arkhipivka, Malavovcha, Varvarivka, Mykolaiivka, Budarki, Nesterne, Shabeline. There's enough work here to last several weeks. Simultaneously, the advance from Vovchansk continues southward along the Siversky Donets River. According to Northern Group data, fierce fighting is currently underway in the triangle of Shesterivka, Losivka, Sosnovy Bor. This is where the pressure is being built that should ultimately deliver an approach to the rear of the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, grouping around Bily Kolodiaz, not head-on, but from the southwest, through the forested terrain and the network of strongpoints that the Russian side has been steadily improving over the past year. The logic is as follows. A strike from the southwest cuts off Bily Kolodiaz from behind, creates an encirclement threat, and the main forces from the north and east close in for the final phase. The battle for Bily Kolodiaz has not yet begun at full intensity, but it is inevitable, and it could begin at any moment. If this line falls, the Russian army reaches operational open ground and gains a direct axis of advance toward the Pechenez Reservoir Dam. That's no longer tactical, that's operational-level warfare. Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Kostantinovka. Rhythm is everything. We move now to one of the most dynamic sectors of the front, the Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Kostantinovka areas. Let's start with the bad news for the Ukrainian side. In the early hours of May 1st, Russian forces delivered a massed strike against a fuel station in the center of Kramatorsk. At first glance, a routine event. In reality, another element in a systematic strategy of strangling urban infrastructure. Strikes on power stations, fuel depots, logistics nodes, all of this is part of a coherent effort to make the cities uninhabitable for military and civilian populations alike. Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Druzhkivka. These cities are in the process of becoming ghost towns. Not tomorrow, but the process has already begun. Now for something that Ukrainian television channels are only just beginning to raise the alarm about, despite viewers of this channel having heard it for months. I'm talking about Oleksandrivka and the Sloviansk direction. After the capture of Siversk, which happened around November of last year, Russian units began a methodical, step-by-step compression of AFU positions. No dramatic breakthroughs, no cinematic charges, just every 2 to 3 days. A small bite, strike, clear the pocket, consolidate, next strike. That's how, at several dozen square kilometers per week, Russia worked its way to Oleksandrivka. Moreover, quite recently a serious breakthrough of 6 to 7 kilometers occurred. The entire resulting pocket was hard cleared by Russian forces. The front line now runs practically along the outskirts of Oleksandrivka, and only now Ukrainian media have caught on. Wait, Sloviansk is not far away. Welcome to reality, gentlemen. It's been there all along. Here's what I'll say about this sector. In war, the most important factor isn't the number of tanks, the kilometers of breakthrough, or the press releases. It's rhythm. The rhythm of the advance, the rhythm of rotation, the rhythm of supply. And the rhythm that Russian units are demonstrating on this particular sector is among the best anywhere on the front. If this kind of daily discipline were replicated everywhere, the overall picture would look fundamentally different. Kostantinovka. Important footage emerged today from the city center. On video, Russian units are filmed dropping leaflets over the central districts. The leaflets contain a straightforward instruction: how AFU servicemen can surrender or vacate their positions without significant resistance. This is a psychological operation, and it is part of a broader design. Let me remind you of the parallel I've already drawn. Exactly the same leaflet drops took place on April 24th in the Dover-Balka area, shortly before the southern group of forces launched a synchronized advance on Kostantinovka from both east and west. Leaflets are always a signal that a major strike is being prepared. In all likelihood, a cutting blow will be delivered from the direction of Novodniprivka toward the northern part of Kostantinovka, with the objective of encircling its southern, southwestern, and southeastern districts. Some intermediate advances are possible before May 9th, but the main pressure, by all indications, will begin immediately after the holiday period. Dobropilya and Zaporizhzhia directions. On Dobropilya, Russian sources reported today that all major roads in the area around the city are now under control. presumably fire control and FPV drone control. The conclusion is clear: the ring around the city is gradually tightening, and assault operations are intensifying. On the Zaporizhzhia direction, several significant developments at once. First, footage has been published from the southeastern part of Novosibirsk, showing AFU forces striking Russian army positions in that district. The very fact that such footage is emerging from that location speaks volumes. The Russian army is consolidating west of Huliai-Polska, and that settlement is effectively encircled. Massed air bomb strikes are being conducted against Huliai-Polska, with the obvious purpose of suppressing AFU positions and ruling out any breakout from the forming cauldron. On the western Zaporizhzhia axis, the picture is different. The AFU are not passive here. According to pro-Russian sources, an active Ukrainian counter-offensive continues. Over the past 24 hours, Ukrainian units expanded their zone of control and zone of infiltration in the Primorske area, as well as between Kamensk and Stepnohirsk. The front here is anything but static. In all likelihood, the Ukrainian side is seeking to improve its positions ahead of what may become a general Zaporizhzhia offensive. Geopolitics, the May 9th ceasefire and the game around Zelensky. Now to the bigger political picture, without which today's overview would be incomplete. Putin has proposed a ceasefire for the May 9th Victory Day period, even if it is unilateral. The information that this was agreed with Trump is no longer rumor. It is fact. According to available data, Putin asked the American president to apply pressure on Zelensky to accept the proposal. Pressure on Kiev from Washington is an entirely workable lever, given Ukraine's critical dependence on American financing and military supply. Zelensky's response was a masterclass in political evasion. He said Ukraine is for peace, that any ceasefire should be more comprehensive, that Putin just wants to hold his parade in safety. Neither yes nor no. But in the context of an explicit request from Trump, this reads considerably more as yes than no. Zelensky has no interest in antagonizing Washington, especially right now, so the probability that May 9th will, in fact, be quiet is higher than it might appear. Mali, the Africa Corps under pressure. Briefly, on Mali. The situation there has deteriorated noticeably. Separatist forces have improved their positions around Bourem, a critical transit node linking the central and northeastern parts of the country, including the Russian base in the Kidal area. According to available information, this settlement has passed under separatist control, dealing a serious blow to logistics and supply lines. A separatist regrouping is also being observed around Gao. An attempt to move into that key city may follow. Russian forces and the Malian government military retain firm control of the airfield and base. The central roads from Bamako toward Gao have transitioned to grey zone status on certain segments. The situation is unstable, but this is not a Syrian scenario in the making. The scale is different. Nevertheless, stabilization remains a very distant prospect. The Middle East, 60 days expired. What comes next? And finally, the Middle East, where a legally significant event occurred today, largely unnoticed by the broader public, but highly consequential for the trajectory of the conflict. Under American law, the President of the United States may conduct military operations without congressional authorization for a period of 60 days. The clock started on February 28th, the beginning of the active phase of the Middle East conflict. Today, May 1st, that period expires. Trump, however, found an elegant legal maneuver. On April 7th, a ceasefire with Iran was declared, which has de facto held ever since. The White House's position is that since the ceasefire, no legal state of hostilities exists, meaning the 60-day clock resets. The logic is debatable, and the law does not explicitly define the mechanism for determining whether such a state exists or not. But this is the legal construction the administration is operating on. The practical takeaway, as of today, the Trump administration effectively has a fresh 60-day window for a potential resumption of military operations against Iran without requiring a congressional vote. The Republican Party has no desire whatsoever to go on record voting for the continuation of a war that is becoming increasingly unpopular with American voters, especially with midterm elections approaching. The Strait of Hormuz, meanwhile, remains virtually blocked. Traffic is a fraction of pre-conflict levels, and whoever passes does so with Iranian permission and payment. The situation is frozen, but unresolved. We're watching. Friends, that's a wrap on today's briefing. It was dense, it was detailed, but that's the only way we do things on this channel. If the episode was useful, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm push the video out. Share it with anyone who values real analysis over television noise. Subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications. Without that, you simply won't see the next episode in time. Take care of yourselves, stay sharp, see you in the next one.